Okay, I'd like to welcome everybody out here this evening for our, we actually have three meetings here tonight. We're going to start off first with our RDA meeting, our Regional Development Agency. Council, I'll need a motion to go into an RDA meeting.
I'll make a motion that we open the RDA meeting.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so it looks like we have a set of minutes that we need to approve. And so do I have a motion there as far as approving the minutes from June 4th, 2020?
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes of June 4th, 2020 for the RDA.
Okay,
Second.
there's a motion and a second by Councilman Thomas. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you very much. We'll move on to item number 2, which will be presented by Tracy Probert, which is the budget for the fiscal year 2020-2021 for the RDA.
Thank you. Tonight I have RDA Resolution 20-03 to adopt the budget for fiscal year 2020-2021. We held the public hearing on June 4th. Since that time, nothing has changed to the budget that was presented that evening. And so staff would recommend the board adopt Resolution 20-03 and for the budget for fiscal year 2020-2021. I don't know if there are any questions.
Questions, council?
Just information question. Last time you mentioned there was some possibilities up north end of Main Street, Alex. Are those projects will take a lot of RDA money or not so much? Not like we anticipate on the south end. Okay.
And that action could take place in this next fiscal year then, correct? Or farther out? Okay. Okay, council, is there any other questions? Okay, with that, I'll entertain a motion then to adopt the budget for 2020, 20-21, or 2021.
Madam Mayor, I move that we adopt RDA Resolution 20-03 and the Layton City Redevelopment Agency budget for fiscal year 2020-2021.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, thank you. Do I need to do a roll call vote on this one? Since it's a expenditure. Okay, with that, I'm going to do a roll call vote. So I'll start with Councilman Day.
Yes.
Boxham.
Aye.
Councilman Fitzpatrick.
Aye.
Councilman Morris.
Aye.
Councilman Thomas.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. That's unanimous. Okay, that actually concludes our RDA meeting. So, council, you want to make a motion to come out of our RDA meeting and go into our work meeting?
So moved.
Okay, thank you. Second?
Seconded.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we will now go into our work meeting for June 18th, 2020. As we have done in the past, we like to start out our meeting with the reports from any of the committees that our council members are on or represent the rest of us. So, council, do any of you have any reports that you'd like to share with the rest of the body?
No, but I'd like you to report on mine since I didn't get noticed on it. I didn't get advised about the youth court graduation, but Joy was there, so I think they deserve a little report on that.
Okay. I'll be happy to. So this past Wednesday, the youth court had their annual graduation from this past year, and they had a fair amount in attendance. There was, I think, 3 or 4 of them that were graduating, and all of them have intentions of going on to college and actually pursuing a career in the judicial system is the best way to put it. Each one of them had a little bit of take on it. One wants to become a nurse first and then progress into the judicial system. So I thought that was very encouraging. I don't recall the amount of hours, but there was a lot of hours. I know one little gal, she had over 540 volunteer hours herself. Wow. But collectively they had a lot of volunteer hours. So I was very proud of them, and again want to thank them all for their service on behalf of the city and their peers, and being able to judge their peers. So yeah, it was a different graduation. No contact whatsoever. They maintained their distancing and they had their masks on. So it was kind of cool.
Just a quick one from the Department of Transportation. Just that the Church Street Bridge over I-15 may open as early as Friday.
Mm-hmm.
As part of that project, they'll be closing Gentile Street Bridge as early as Sunday. And then they'll detour people from Main Street and Layton Parkway. So hopefully they'll have that done 65 days or so is what they said to widen and improve the bridge in that location. But just some updates so that we can see things moving forward and hopefully be able to get where we want to go in a few months with all the access points open.
Well, the nice thing about that too, and being able to start that project a little bit early, is the fact that our high school kids, certainly they paid the price this past year on not being able to have a decent graduation or a real closure to the year. So hopefully we can open this street up in time for their new year to begin. So, okay.
So I noticed on my way down tonight, the sign said it had been changed from Sunday to Saturday.
Well, every day counts in the construction business. So
When are they opening the other one? Did you say Saturday?
Friday.
Oh, as early, so,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, there's no ribbon coating on it or no running our golf carts or go-karts down the street or anything like that. But you can walk it. Okay.
I have just a couple things. One, our youth council did a service project. We had about 8 youth. Their advisor and myself went up to Open Doors, the food bank up there, and helped do landscaping, cleanup, and some bagging of food and stuff like that. And then our communities that care, we had a pretty successful bingo that kind of tied in a little bit with our Layton history. We had 5 winners from that were rewarded with gift certificates from local businesses. And then we're going to start gearing back up to get the CTC going. We have a stakeholders meeting scheduled via Zoom on July 8th.
That's excellent. I really appreciate all that work there, Dawn. And I can tell you that Jason from Open Doors has already sent an email with expressing his thanks and appreciation for those kids and all the work that they've done. He said that was very much
They really
thankful for
worked. They worked. You know, you get a bunch of teenage boys together and you have to kind of worry, especially when you give them a lawnmower and a weed eater, but they really helped clean that place up. They stayed on task and were great.
That's great. I love to see the youth in action like this. And again, that's just shows how valuable our citizens are here in our city. Okay, Councilman Morris, do you have any reports?
The only thing I'd like to bring up, and I don't know if you were going to bring this up or not, we're still in a pandemic. We're still, our case counts are still gowing here in the city and throughout the county. And just in the last last 4 days, we've had 12 more cases. We're up to about 147 for the Layton South Weaver area, which is the most in the county. However, the concentration measurement that they use of cases per 100,000, we're 6th, so we kind of drop. So that's good, mm-hmm. But we still need to be vigilant. And we heard from Dr. Dunn yesterday talking about what we're at the highest risk ever for this disease right now. And so even though we've moved phases and we're looking at moving to another phase, the green phase, the virus hasn't gone away. we have to be more vigilant. And so we're talking about wearing our face masks out in public where you can't be 6 feet from people, good hand hygiene. And if you're sick, stay home. I mean, those are just basic common sense things that I know a lot of people were upset that the economy was shut down and to whatever extent it was. It's now reopening, but the comments were, just let us know what the risks are and let us govern ourselves. Okay, now's the time to show that. We know what the risks are. For the most part, we learned a lot. Now it's time for us to govern ourselves and to show that we can mitigate the spread of this and still operate within our economy, because that has to come back.
You're
So
absolutely
we're-
right.
But the virus has not gone away yet. So
It's
just
not,
just a thought.
and while those numbers are alarming and the fact that they're increasing, I think the only positive from this is they are not seeing an increase in hospitalization. So unfortunately, yeah, a lot more people are getting sick with the virus and having to go through that, but at least we're not seeing the hospitalization. And I think within the county, we are still at 5 that are in the hospital. So that's
Yeah,
that's
we're
a good
lower
thing.
rates on positives and hospitalizations, and yeah.
Thank you. Councilman Thomas, do you have anything to report?
Nada.
Okay.
Oh, excuse me, nothing.
Hey. Okay, well, I appreciate you, council, for your efforts in all the different committees you sit on and representing the city. With that, we'll move on to item number 2, and Tracy Probert will assist us in this discussion.
Okay, so tonight you'll be presented ordinance 20-17, and that will be a public hearing. And so you'll need to take public comment related to the amendments and then move forward from there. The amendments, you may have seen this in your packet of information, 263,814 addition in the general fund. A small portion of that, 78,000, was related to a need in the streets department due to salt, sand, and asphalt overages. So we needed to bring that part of the budget into balance. 93,000 in police and fire special services, wildland fire, those types of revenues. Also recognizing the use of some funds for the purchase of a fire heavy equipment apparatus from the neighboring city. And then 91,500 in grants that were previously unanticipated. All of those are CARES Act type grants. Well, not all of them, but most of it's CARES grant and some bulletproof vest grant that we were able to receive. Were there any questions related to any of these as you reviewed the information?
Just one, Tracy, street self-insurance, that's something I haven't heard before.
So if they have an accident if any department has an accident with a vehicle, then the department has to cover that out of their budget, and they have to move money from other areas. So they have to conserve and cut back in order to pay for that themselves. It's kind of I don't know what word to use in this form, kind of self-penalizing, right? If you have a wreck, then your department gets to pay for it. There isn't just some magic fund that's going to cover it for you. So it's a good incentive within the department to be, not that there already isn't incentive enough, to be very careful. And generally all of our employees are very careful with the equipment they're entrusted with, but there's always an occasional accident. So that's generally what the self-insurance means.
And then Tracy, I just have a question regarding the 54,000. In one area, it's a transfer from ramp to the athletic fund for the centennial celebrations. And then down below, it's the athletic recognition of the ramp funding, where we're not having the centennial celebration. Is that going to be able to be carried over and not lost?
Yeah, it'll be carried over. So it gets budgeted. If it doesn't get spent, then it'll stay in that fund. Where
Okay.
it's the athletic fund, it'll still be there. And that's where Parks and Rec would like to track those types of activities. So yeah, that won't be a
And it'll
a
be,
problem. We
yeah.
will probably bring it back as a budget amendment in the next year so that it can be reappropriated,
okay,
because otherwise it just sits in the fund balance.
that was my question.
And I'm pretty sure there was some expenditures in that fund as well.
Okay,
So that amount will be not the full amount coming back in, just so you know.
Okay.
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 Any other questions? Okay, we can move on then to item number 3, which is the current budget.
Okay.
Or not the current budget, excuse me, the proposed budget.
The proposed budget. So that'll be ordinance 2018, and we did hold the public hearing on June 4th. And so you won't have any requirement to take public comment tonight. You may receive some, but we've already gone through that process, and we did that intentionally to allow some time for you as a council to listen to comments that were made and then be able to make adjustments if you desired. And so we've fulfilled that. Also important in the motion for adoption tonight is that you're adopting the budget, the tax rate, and the compensation schedule for elected, statutory, and appointed officials. And that's worded out that way in the adoption. But the tax rate being proposed is 0.001645, which is the certified rate by the county and the state. So there's no increase or decrease in the rate. We're taking what they've accepted. And what that means is that they've given us a rate that will generate the same amount of revenue as we generate in this current year that we have now, plus new growth. So they add new growth into that. Let's see if there's
So
anything.
Tracy, what do? They figure things have appreciated and adjust that way.
Mhm.
That's how they figure that.
Right, so they go out and reassess the county. I think nowadays they do the entire county. I apologize for not recalling. It used to be that they did a fifth of the county, so every 5 years your property would get reassessed. And I think now they're doing it more frequently than that. But they go out, they do a reassessment, they see what valuations have done, and then so valuations go up 5%, your rate comes down 5% so that you generate the same amount of revenue. Then they calculate new growth based on building permits and things like that that get submitted to the county, the value of those permits. And they do some calculations on that, which are pretty complex, and they come up with an amount that we're allowed to add. So if we were at 8 point, I'm just pulling numbers out because I didn't open the book, but if we were at 8.2 million last year in sales tax, and now we're at 8.4 or 5 million, the reason for that difference is because of new growth. And we're allowed to have that.
But do you remember what it was last year? It was 1.7,
It
wasn't it?
was 1666. So that's that. And then I would just point out some things that changed from the tentative budget, from the when we pointed out the other day. We had discussed that as well, that we had proposed taking just over 1.2 million out of the budget. That consisted of 500,000 for a fire engine, 120,000 for HVAC work at this building, eliminating the transfer to the street lighting fund for 200,000, and also delaying and taking out of the budget the Chapel Park playground, and reducing one of the employee requests in the finance department, taking those out. And then we also proposed in our last meeting to put on hold about $1.3 million, a little more than $1.3 million worth of projects, personnel, and equipment. And we identified those for you in some slides. And so that would be the plan that Alex, as the city manager, would move forward with your approval, obviously. The revenues that went along with that, we reduced fee in lieu from automobiles 50,000. And these I did just to balance the budget. Or reduced sales tax 847,000, telecommunications tax 125,000, and that one isn't actually related to slowing of the economy or anything. That tax just keeps going down. And so as I looked at it again, well, let's just take it down even a little more. Room tax, we cut that significantly, and interest will be anticipated to be significantly lower as well because they cut the rates twice in the last couple of months. So some of the other funds that were affected from the tentative budget, the street lighting fund. In the tentative budget, it was presented as a $1 increase. In the proposed budget, it's a $2 increase in the fee. and also the elimination of the transfer from the general fund. The ramp fund, with the elimination of the Chapel Park playground, that brought down the amount for projects by $269,000. We've reduced the revenue anticipated there, $138,000, interest $30,000, and the difference in that we're accounting for as a return to fund balance. Capital projects fund is affected by the projects that I've mentioned, so those monies don't get transferred to the capital projects fund. And so the revenues transferred in and the projects were reduced in that fund. And in the water fund, there was an additional transfer that where there's a shared vehicle between secondary water and water. We've discussed that in a few meetings. That needed to be added to this, to the proposed budget, $23,000. That would be what I would propose to discuss tonight in the meeting before presenting the ordinance to you. I don't know if there's any other questions, information, discussion.
Okay, council?
So Tracy, can you, again, on the employee hiring that we put on hold, what the positions were and how much they were?
Let me find that here in my book. So the positions that were put on hold: a code enforcement supervisor, 2 new patrol officers, 2 new crossing guards, a pay increase for all of the crossing guards, a recreation supervisor, and park maintenance worker. The accounting clerk was eliminated, so out of all positions that were proposed, the only ones that are proposed to move forward effective July 1 would be a training specialist in fire that's paid for half out of fire and half out of EMS, and a part-time inspector in engineering that they requested, for the most part related to the Highway 89 project, just the need for more inspection as that project comes through. Does that sound correct, Steve? Okay.
Are the crossing guards, are they related to the new elementary school that are being built? Or are there, so can those be postponed? Or are they absolutely needed for the school to function?
I don't know the answer to that.
And Chief Keefe's not here.
You want to,
Maybe Alex knows.
I think Alex can speak to that.
The idea would be that those would be postponed through September when school starts, and would make that evaluation prior to the beginning of the school. So the other positions would be postponed until December, at least the first of the year. But those we would, as we will have 2 or 3 months of data by then, and then would make the decisions. They're fairly small dollar amounts, relatively speaking. But no, we wouldn't want the schools to open without those guards in place. So that's the plan we have.
Okay. I know we have a hard time sometimes getting them anyway. We have our police and code enforcement out doing crossing guard stuff. So I'd hate to even short them even more.
So I got a question along that same line. Do we have still in the budget a public relations salary? And since we don't have that filled, could we use that for some of this?
Yes. Yeah, that money's still in the budget. So I don't know that it makes, any practical difference whether you're using new money or money that's in the budget already. It hasn't been, I don't know if it's still appropriated or not, so there may have to be a process to just do a budget amendment and pull it back in to appropriate it. But that position hasn't been filled.
And then Tracy, my other question on the patrol officers, does this 1.3 million that's on hold include their supplies and vehicle?
Yes.
Include that. Okay.
And again, is that hold until the fall when we can evaluate? Any other questions? I know you guys got lots of them, so.
Yeah, I got a question.
so
I got a
you might as well
question.
get it out there.
So before I ask the council their feelings on it again, I brought up the maintaining the property tax rate multiple times in the different work meetings. So, and I kind of want to know the support, if it is there or not, from the council after I ask you a question, Tracy.
Okay.
So the difference in those, do you have any idea how much, say on an average $300,000 house, that would be for the year to maintain that rate?
To maintain the rate, I didn't do the calculation. I think that it's about 6%. So if we did 17% last year and you divide that out, we were about 1.2 million. And that was, boy, it's a stretch to remember
No,
what it was per
I'm
house.
talking more on a per
Per
house.
house.
Per household.
Ooh, I would hate to guess. Right off the top of my head, I don't know. Since we kind of decided we weren't going to head down that road, I didn't spend any time doing those calculations, so.
And is that kind of the consensus of the council not to go that route, or? I mean, before we vote on the budget, I kind of want to know what's what, so we're straight on the vote.
We that's just, we decided not to, the ship sailed on that, I believe, for this year, has it not?
That's what I'm asking.
I mean, legally or officially? Really?
Yeah,
Well, at
because we
this
would have
point-
had to,
at
had
this
to
point, I
acknowledge the
think
truth
you
and
could-
taxation.
Yeah.
You could still do it if you chose to, but we'd have to let the,
Bends the time frame if you decide to do that.
yeah, it did.
Mm-hmm.
No, I thought our discussions, like Clint said, I thought we had kind of talked about maybe with the street lighting and everything, that this year we would just let it go, but to definitely revisit it for the next budget.
My opinion was kind of what I told you today, just that I think we should be doing it every year, making at least that determination as what we're been elected to do. But I think that the idea of in the midst of a pandemic, that I think punting for this year was probably the smart thing to do. So I'm not interested in using it for this year, but I certainly am interested in looking at it next year and the year after that and the year after that.
And I agree with Zach on that.
Anybody else want to weigh in on that discussion?
Oh,
or-
it helped, I mean, as we know today, so the rate went from 1,666 to, if we adopt it tonight, 1,645, that's gone down.
Mhm.
And we've,
Growth.
in the discussions during the previous council and everything that happened this last year with the property tax increase, we had years of not doing, well, actually, we had years of, we lowered it. We decided to lower it by 2% a couple of years and put us even further
In the-
behind.
yes.
And so that rate each year, as property rates continue to, or property values continue to go up, that rate comes down as you would.
Correct.
And so to catch up for that, that's why we have the truth and taxation. We're able to do that. The thing that kind of hampers the cities with that is the fact that there's not a way to keep up with inflation as things get even more expensive. And so this is a way to at least keep up with inflation and keep things equal with that. Now, technically it would be a tax increase. But as a city, as we look at the stable areas of revenue, being able to keep up with inflation is a big deal as we're trying to deliver city services. So something that we should be looking at each year. I agree. That's part of our responsibility, and not to like shy away because there's a truth in taxation thing that comes. We just have to do what's best as we look at the services that we need and the budget, and it's just part of the things that should be each year talked about. So I thought we'd mentioned that we weren't going to do it this year,
Right.
but it ought to be something that is looked at each year and not just, well, no, I don't want to do the truth and taxation. Let's not do it.
Well, and if anybody listened to what the citizens had to say last year, I mean, that was a big bite for them to take. And if I heard it loud and clear, it was, why don't you just look at a small amount each year rather than one ginormous amount? So, I mean, I think going forward, that would be a smart and prudent thing to do on behalf of the city and making sure that we keep up with all the services and and that we need to, and especially as elected officials, that's our job to kind of look at those things.
Yeah, and I additionally think that if we're going to raise revenue, I like the truth in taxation because I like the public comment more than I like raising it in fees, because it's easy to raise it in a fee. The truth in taxation, we want more from each citizen because we're maintaining the rate. We have to stand here and we have to take when they come in and tell us why they don't want it. That's a lot easier than a work meeting where we pass or a budget where we pass a $2 increase in the street lighting fee that they'll talk about, but it's not something that we have to hold a special hearing about. So I personally like the concept of making it part of our every year budget process that Layton goes through truth and taxation, because that's what we should do as responsible stewards of the taxpayer funds.
Okay, the reason I ask is just to firm up in my mind, because I know we've talked about it many times. I knew the consensus was kind of weight, but as we nail down the budget, I just wanted to nail down what people's feelings are on it. That's all.
Well, I appreciate you bringing that forward, because I mean, that's the purpose of these work meetings, is to, have the discussion and make sure that on behalf of the governing body, we're making the right decisions and a collective decision. So if you guys have any questions or doubt whatsoever, I mean, now's the time to kind of bring it forward and let's discuss it amongst ourselves so we can do what's right. So having said that, is there any more discussion here on this budget or any
I
other
got
items of concern?
another one.
Okay, bring it forward.
My personal feeling is with the positions that we want to postpone, I don't feel real comfortable postponing some of those positions, like the 2 officers and the crossing guards. I would rather not postpone those, and I would rather maybe postpone purchase of vehicles or something like that. I'm not saying eliminate purchase of vehicles, but maybe postpone some of those and go ahead with some of these. I think like the crossing guard positions and 2 new officers in today's world, I think would be beneficial for us, where we could maybe wait a little while on some vehicle purchases or something like that.
And that kind of coincides with my question, and maybe it's more procedural for you, Gary. Maybe let's say that we want to change something in this budget and we want to make that motion, or we want to have that discussion amongst ourselves. When's the time to do that? How does that work? When do we start the discussion in terms of if Tom says, I think those positions should stay in, and then we have a discussion about that? Because I know the whole budget has to be voted on combined, but when do we have those discussions about what actually is now the new version of the budget that Tom just decided he wanted to put in, and then we have a discussion and say, yeah, I think that's good, let's go forward with that. So maybe just procedural questions on that.
So maybe first off, the only thing that's been eliminated from the budget are the fire engine, the 1 accounting position, the park, playground, and a couple other things that I listed, right? Anything that's on hold, the budget approves an amount of money, and administratively, Alex has committed to you that we will hold on. This is what we propose to hold on, right? If those things want to be shuffled around, that we don't have to do that in our adoption of the budget because the money is there.
Appropriated.
Right. And so then it's just an administrative decision. I mean, as a council, you could take your suggestions to the mayor, I would assume, and she could provide them to Alex, but ultimately you've given Alex the authority to manage that amount of money in the best way that it should be for the city.
But if I want to bring the apparatus back into the budget,
That would have to be
Okay.
something that you.
Zach, can you just talk into the mic?
I'll get closer.
Did that answer
That
your
answers it,
question?
yeah.
Okay.
Just when we have discussions about what comes in, what goes out, because you're waiting to vote to the end. And so it's like if we're making a bunch of amendments and discussions, it's becoming something as it's going along that I just want to make sure we have all the discussion so we know what's actually in the final motion. So, because the final motion is going to be motion to adopt the budget and that ordinance, and then with amendments for X, Y, Z, like that. Okay.
Yeah.
That helps. Thank you.
Yeah, and this is a good meeting to do that in, which is a work meeting. It's usually closer than this, but it's a good meeting.
And I'm not saying every one of those positions, but I mean, I think the crossing guards are important. I think the officers are probably important. And Zach brings up another one. I think the fire apparatus is, I when we talked about that last time, we didn't really express our opinions. I don't really think that's a good one to eliminate.
Originally, that was meant to be purchased over a 2-year period. And so, we felt like back when we originally proposed the budget in our all-day work meeting, and we weren't not quite in a pandemic, I don't think then, that we felt like we had the money as if things continued as normal to just go ahead and purchase that in this coming year. So just a clarification is all, is that originally it wasn't proposed to be purchased in 1 year. And since it was one of the largest single dollar items on the budget, it was a kind of an easier place to come up with that much money. But I understand your point.
And Tracy, do we have 1 year already set aside on that?
No.
Was that over a 2 year?
It would have been 21 and 22.
Okay. I remember it being a 2 year deal.
And I wouldn't have a problem with, and I don't have a problem with them anyway, but some of these things wouldn't be as big an issue, but where we're still uncertain on what money we're going to have, I think we need to be a little more specific in what we do here now.
Okay.
That's all.
And with those ones that we've eliminated, that's what we've attempted to propose, is that these specific things we propose we take out, and we'll bring them back next year or the year after, when we see, as the department directors see fit, and then as Alex would like to propose, they'll come back into the budget. Everything that was in the original budget is necessary, right? I mean, eventually that fire apparatus needs to show up.
Mm-hmm.
And, does it show up this year, or do we start paying for it next year? That's to be determined.
If you push it off a year, what does it do for the apparatus? Is this like a sale at Kmart that if we
Go
don't
back
jump
up.
on it,
Does it get more expensive?
Actually, in some discussion with Alex, one of the things that we have is we did purchase an apparatus from a neighboring city, which we're using as a stopgap that we felt was a real prudent purchase to make. It was a very good price, and it doubles as a heavy rescue and also as a backup engine. So we felt, and Alex and my discussion, we felt like we could safely delay that apparatus. It was certainly we're going to need to purchase it, but with the purchase that we made from the neighboring city, that's going to work out very well and fulfill our needs. The thing to keep in mind too is when we do purchase the apparatus, it takes almost a year for that apparatus to get built. And typically we pay a part up front, and then we pay again at the end when we take delivery, and then we pay the balance.
and that's not something we're getting from the neighborhood city.
No, we purchased.
This is a new.
Yeah, this would be a
Okay.
brand new apparatus.
Okay.
That's why the price tag's $500,000 versus the
Well,
one
no, yeah, but
Right.
it's, yeah.
the
Okay.
one we purchased right now was we
Right.
put in the budget was a good deal. It's $40,000. It'll allow us to basically surplus an old truck that we had converted into a heavy rescue for our urban search and rescue, and a trailer that we had to haul behind it. So we can put all that on this one apparatus. So it was a talk with Alex. We felt it was for right now, it's a great purchase, and it works very well for us. And it's also an engine, so we can use it as a reserve engine.
Which is what the apparatus you're looking at was.
Right. It's
to be-
the purchase would be for a fire engine. Correct.
Right. And this thing's, we're not talking a used car that's going to be there for a year.
Now this,
It was hardly used.
yeah, this was apparatus we purchased from Kaysville.
Right.
It was a heavy rescue. They actually used it as a heavy rescue. They had purchased some new apparatus. They had this. The price that we paid was a very good price, substantially below what they probably could have sold it to other places. But we've worked out an agreement with them and purchased it from them.
It's
So
not
we
the-
felt it was a good purchase. It
But
actually
what
served
I'm asking
two
is
purposes.
it's going to last longer than 2 years.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, this
okay,
one,
yeah.
like, again, using it as reserve.
You
and
say
as a
stopgap,
heavy
and I
rescue.
think, okay, my kid's in school. As soon as he gets out, I can dump that car.
Right. Well, this will be our heavy rescue and a reserve apparatus,
Okay.
but it will serve us for many years into the future. But we can also use it as an engine
Right.
if we had other engines
Need-
that had to go in for
right.
repair.
Thanks.
That makes sense?
Yeah. it does
Okay.
Now.
All right, great. Thank you.
So you're saying it was used. or pre-owned, not used.
Pre-owned with about 20,000 miles on it.
Yeah.
My question, Chief, now is by delaying the purchase of that engine and how does that affect staffing and equipping the new station? Does that set us behind there?
No, we'll still be able to move one of our apparatus to the new station when that's completed. And again, that's going to take nearly a year to complete that as well. At that point, we have the apparatus now. As far as our deployment, we would do in terms of the apparatus we would use, we would move one of our engines that we have at Station 3 here on Fort Lane. That would be moved to the east side station. And we would probably at that point use the ladder truck and staff the ladder truck out of Station 3. But we'll just move apparatus around. And then eventually we're going to have to purchase that apparatus though. A lot of shuffling of apparatus. So I want to make sure you understood that.
For what it's worth, I know the chief and Alex did ask my opinion on that, and I expressed don't pass a good deal if it's right. If it's that good of a deal, let's grab it, because I felt like it was the right thing to do. And again, it bought us some time. And then the way the chief just explained everything, I think it just makes sense to do that. So thank you for being on the lookout.
And Mayor, it also eliminated a purchase we were actually had in the under capital improvement projects a few years down the road, which was to purchase a heavy rescue vehicle as part of the urban search and rescue team that we participate as a state response team within Davis County. And since we'll have this heavy rescue, we'll be able to put the equipment out of take it out of the trailer and the older pickup truck that we use to haul it. This will make it much better for our response for heavy rescue at urban search and rescue in the event of a disaster or earthquake or any kind of a major incident. So that eliminated us having to spend probably $300,000 to $400,000 for a heavy rescue within the next 3 to 5 years.
And you also had additional funding that was sitting there that we could use towards this, right? That kind of qualified?
Yes, the apparatus actually was purchased with, when we go out on wildland fire responses, we receive revenue that covers the cost of personnel going up and as well as backfill and the use of our apparatus. And so we typically have used that money and put it into an apparatus replacement fund. And so that's what the money was already in there. So that's why we were able to just transfer the money from the wildland revenue, as Tracy talked about, into this line item. So wildland fire response is paid for it.
Right. Well, like I said, it sounded like a win-win all the way around. So, I mean, I think it was a smart thing to do.
I'm all for that purchase. I don't have a problem with that purchase. I'm more concerned about making sure the future one is funded appropriately.
Yeah, well, as Tracy mentioned, we weren't planning on purchasing it till another year, and then we moved it forward initially before, situations kind of turned a little bit. So that was originally the plan. It was still going to be probably a year or two, 2 years out, that we would actually get that apparatus. So I think we'll still be okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
You good?
Yeah. Well, with that.
I just wanted to make sure that fire engine wasn't the one that they used during the parades at the end to have the water fight.
Yeah.
There's no water.
No, there's no parade this year, so we
different-
can wait.
That one's privately
Different
owned.
engine.
Other city.
Yeah.
That's right.
I guess I'm going to be the one that's going to open this can of worms. And it has to do with the merit pay. A couple questions. First of all, I want to say to all the staff that's sitting in the room, you guys do a great job. And this is no reflection on what any of the staff for the city does. But we're in an unknown. I won't even say we're in a hard time because we don't even know if we are. It just depends on what news media you listen to, what you listen to, what you see. I'm hearing conflicting things. Just heard today that Layton's losing 285 jobs because the Bed Bath & Beyond call center's closing. I mean, it's really sad what's going on out there. But we do know we have great employees and they need to be fairly compensated. So I don't feel comfortable with the full 3%. And one thing that I need to clarify, whether it comes from you or from Gary or Alex, is that if we set a rate for a merit, can it be put on hold until a time that we feel, kind of like with these positions, that we feel more comfortable. We've got another couple of months of numbers behind us. My concern about the numbers we have, the 2 weeks of March didn't look good. April didn't look good. May's looking great. Well, March and April, none of us could go out and buy clothes and, things we couldn't get out of the house to go do that. And all of a sudden we could. And so, was that just pent up spending? What is June and July going to bring? Are we going to continue to stay high? Or are we going to settle back, lower because we bought in May what we needed to catch up on? I don't know that any of us have that answer just yet. And so my question is if we do pass a merit at whatever percentage, can it be made retroactive if the money is there, retroactive back to July 1st?
Yes, in my discussions with Alex, that's the way we could approach that, yes.
Okay. All right.
Anybody else?
So
have
the
a
idea
comment?
again would be that just like some of these pieces of equipment and personnel, the money's in the budget, but with your direction, obviously, we postpone that until whatever day we decide to postpone it to. But then again, make it retroactive if things work out the way we hope they do.
Is my understanding that we looked at the merit increase again, or the overall amount, and shaved some of that as well?
Right. So in the process of going, all the evaluations of the employees have been coming in, their scores, and since our last meeting, we've been able to run all that through the program that tells us the amounts and things. And so, yeah, it's about 140,000 less to achieve a full merit. So we originally talked about 635,000, and we're down to about 495, 496, somewhere in there. And then also, in the meantime, there was a discussion to help, or there's been a contract put in place to help us with our prescription medication, and that also cut about 240,000 out of our original request. So, and that's hoping that program can help with our prescription drugs. So there wasn't an increase on the city side or the employee side being proposed for health insurance premiums for this coming budget year either. So between those two things, about 380,000 less than what we had originally talked about towards personnel is needed.
So the current budget shows it at 3%. So do we, and I'm hearing a figure of about 2.3 is what you're thinking brings it down to this 495?
The 496, yeah.
Whatever is
Yeah.
about a 2.3.
Right. So that doesn't mean a 2.3% increase for the employees. What that means is our total wage expense
Yeah,
right now
the merit
has
balance.
to increase 2.3% in order to accommodate a full merit increase for the employees.
Yeah, okay. And so I don't know exactly how we word that when it comes that time. We're going to leave that one up to Zach.
Probably the dollar amount, right? Should we stick with the dollar amount? Should we stick with the dollar amount versus a percentage amount?
Yeah, that would be
I
better.
think that would be the
Okay,
right thing to do.
okay.
So the way that generally works is part of the ordinance allows some adjustment there because we have to finalize typically we can't get all that finalized before we have to adopt the budget. And so what it does is whatever amount of money we needed for the full merit, I've given you an estimate. Now we've given you a new estimate, the 496. Then we just adjust our use of fund balance off of that. So it does ultimately get adjusted in the budget down to what actually is needed to cover everyone's merit increase.
Okay.
Hopefully that makes sense.
And I know
So for right now, the whole dollar amount is in the budget as of today, but the intent is that gets adjusted to what the actual merit increase comes out to.
Okay. And then we've talked about on these positions and some other equipment and stuff, December's the date we've kind of thrown out as review this. Do we need to wait that long or can we say we'll review it in September? If we're still not there, we'll review it again in December?
Alex and I's intention is to review it every month.
Every
with
month.
you.
We can review it monthly
Okay.
if we need
So we'll
to.
bring, we don't have the April numbers yet. We would probably have them by Monday. I could come back at the next meeting we have in July, mid-July, I think is when we have the next one. So my intention would be we come back mid-July. This is what happened. This is where we're at. I mean, we most likely wouldn't make any moves then, but come back in August. This is where we're at. This is what we see. Maybe at that point, we address the crossing guards because school will be starting, right? So things are looking good, then we address that. We come back in September. My intention is to come back every month,
Okay.
and we address things as we go. We see how things are panning out, go from there.
So I guess, Tracy, my question is, how in-depth will those reviews be? So, I mean, we'll be there, for instance, vehicles, will there be vehicles purchased before that? Or will you guys come back and say, we feel like we can purchase these now? So we know, have a more tight knowledge of what's happening. Because normally in the past, we pass the budget, the money's there, things are good, things are purchased when needed. This time, I don't think it's that way.
Right. I
So,
would say that
guess-
the intention would be to present you with the picture of what the condition of the city is, and then Alex would make his proposal to, these are the things that I would like to move forward with.
And I think that's what we've had in our discussions in the past regarding the budget, knowing that, here we are, we're kind of picking through these items here, but in reality, this is a fluid budget. I mean, this is something that I think, given the current circumstances, we're going to have to be adjusting regularly. In fact, quite often compared to what we've ever done in the past. So that's why I'm kind
I
of like
think
thinking that
that'd be-
we
and
need to.
It could be that, the full merit's 496 and 6 months or 3 or 4 months from now, things are looking really well, really good. And we just say, well, go ahead and appropriate half of that merit pay. Can you do that? Make it retroactive. And then the next 6 months, things are still looking good. Looks like we've fully recovered. Then you can appropriate the rest of the money. Can you do it piecemeal like that? Or is it like a one-time?
That's up to Alex to
One time
decide.
off.
I would hate
Yeah,
to say
that's-
anything about that myself, so it's up to him to determine that.
I understand the
And
budgets.
that's not my preference. I'm just asking as a theoretical question.
Sure. Yeah, the answer is yes. There's all kinds of flexibility in how that's applied. I think the key, from my perspective, the key points that have been touched on is the fact that it's funding a full merit. And what the full merit means is that based on the evaluation and compensation system the city's had in place, it's been a very stable, predictable system the employees have been able to rely on over the years, is that it says that if you receive a certain score, then you're eligible for a certain economic reward based on that score. So full funding allows that system can be met. That formula that's been laid out in policy for 25 years can be met. But yeah, there's great flexibility in the way that we would do that. And again, I think I hope that this is the process we followed virtually for the last 30 years in the city. And are happy to make adjustments. That's part of our responsibility and job, is to view and be ahead of what's happening, and then to make recommendations to you, recognizing that in the end you make those decisions. So this is the environment is different in terms of the challenges we face, but the principles by which we administer the budget are not any different at all. There's more attention to it this year, on the part of a lot of cities, but for Layton City, this is not an aberration at all. This is the same way we've always done business. So I'm not trying to minimize that, and to have the involvement of the council is a good thing, and the questions that are asked, because obviously you adopt it and have to finalize it. But yeah, we do have great flexibility in doing that, and we'll make those recommendations to you month by month, recognizing the timing of some of those, whether it be vehicles or whether it be crossing guards. With vehicles, the delay isn't significant because of the generally accepted accounting principles. You typically can't encumber funds before the funds have been appropriated. And so, like these police cars, for example, that we're talking about waiting and buying later, most of the time you're ordering them after July. And so by the time they're actually manufactured and you receive arrival, you're 6 months through the year anyway, or very close to. So in terms of impact on the department, is just one example. The impact is negligible compared to what they otherwise have. There's a few vehicles that have been under contract, and so we're trying to honor those contracts, but otherwise it's not much of a change, except for just a formal postponement of them, as opposed to just a practical one that happens anyway.
And Alex, I just have a quick question then. So because this is the first time we've done this and all of the rules of how you pass these ordinances and stuff. So everything that we've talked about that's on hold will remain on hold. And then we will review that and pull them out as we get the monies or know that we have the monies to do that. On the merit, though, do we need to do something different? Because that is a different figure than what was in the budget we saw, or that the citizens saw on June 4th. So do we need to make that part of a motion that it's brought down to this 496?
I don't think you need to. You certainly could do that. As Tracy, I think, tried to explain, is that the historical practice has been that the amount of money that's asked for and put into the budget is an estimate. That number can fluctuate.
Okay.
Typically, it fluctuates down. What we actually spend is not what was appropriated in the budget, but it's what is actually required. When you go through and look at every individual position, you consider people that are topped out, consider people that are close to being topped out and can't get a full merit, even though their scores are good. When you factor all of those, higher paid employees may leave in the interim. You have some retirements and you have lower paid employees. That number always fluctuates, but what we spend is only what is required. We don't spend what was approved in the budget.
That was one of my questions about why we went from 2 to 2.3 and why their initial assessment wasn't just 2.3 if that fully funds the merit. So that's the answer, that we basically did all of the work for it to see exactly what a full merit would look like in practice, not just an estimate. And this is what it is.
Exactly. And a big piece of that, council member, was what Tracy mentioned, is the evaluations. All those evaluations have been done, so we know what the scoring is. We've sent all those back and had the departments vet them. They've been reviewed by the department heads to make sure there's consistency, predictability, and fairness across the departments. And so what the dollar amount is no longer a guess. We've taken all those potentials out of it, and that's why we can come back and with certitude say the 496 is the number. And it won't go above that. And then we're delighted. We think that's a good approach, is to delay it. It's consistent with the way we're handling in cooperation with you guys, so many of the other parts of the budget. It's predictable and support that completely.
If I might add, we could commend Gary and his department for having that number to us quickly. They spent a lot of extra time, put off some other projects and things that normally they wouldn't, so that we could have, get that for tonight, where it was, like we've all been saying, a little bit different year. Normally they've had more time to do that. And so they made a real extra effort to get that number as early as they did.
Thanks, Gary, because the whole point of this is that we have so many numbers that we don't know. So
Yeah,
the fact that we can have a number that we do know is nice. So thank you.
Exactly.
Thank the people that did it. Okay.
Yeah, thank the people that did it. I just want to say, at least from this seat, that as I've thought about this, the postponing it, having better information moving forward is a better way to do this, and being able to, because we don't, as Don says, we don't know what's going to happen in the future. We all wish that we had a crystal ball, but because the city has been run so well, we know these numbers. There are other cities that are just flat out, hey, we're not doing anything because we don't have any money, which isn't how you should do things. We should be analyzing, we should figure these things out, and I feel that we've done that, and that's impressive. And the city, we're all about delivering services. That's what the city does, services for the residents. And those services are provided by people. We need good people to deliver good services. We want to make sure that when we flush that toilet, that it goes where it's supposed to go. And when we flip the spigot, the water comes out and the garbage is collected. Those things that you really take for granted until something goes wrong. And then it's, oh no, what's going on? I didn't think anything could go wrong. To me, that's what this is about. I don't want to punish city employees, those that are helping deliver these services, just because there's a pandemic. It's got to be an approach of, we're looking at the data. If, because of our diverse economy that we've worked on, if the money is there, and you've trimmed it. You've already looked at all of the items that you should have, which I appreciate. You've trimmed it. If the money's there, this is what we've done. It's not a, hey, let's give everybody a raise just because. That's not what this is about. So I appreciate that you're helping us to move forward, look behind, we're gonna move forward. We're gonna look these months, the data that comes back these next following months, and analyze it and see if it makes sense. I would also hope that if it's not the best numbers, that it's an up to an amount, instead of, it's not just a yay or nay, but it's an up to amount based on the numbers. That's, at least from this seat, that's what I'd like to see.
Well, that would be the reason for postponing things, is so that you have an option that if things just fall apart, right, then
we'll have bigger problems if then there's just this, if things fall apart.
Then we will already be prepared to handle those things.
So, okay. I like that. From this seat, from this seat, I would say I agree with what you said, Clint, because I think that there's an expectation that comes with city employment that the merit pay is part of that structure. And that's how it's been. That's how it should be. I think it's good policy. And so the withholding until we get more data is only that. It's just a withholding and abundance of caution. It's not a new policy, at least from my understanding. It's not a new policy that this is something that was going to be looked at more, with more thorough eyes. Now, I think that I appreciate the ability to be able to bring back the number and to bring these cuts because we are in the midst of a pandemic, and I think that we need to be realistic with the situation that's around. But we want to make sure that we're providing the kinds of deliverance of promises that the city employees are expecting. At the same time, understanding that the citizens who pay tax money to the city to employ all these folks and myself, right, to be able to do that, they're sending money to us that they might not have as much money as they had before this pandemic started. And so that's kind of what we've been dealing with as a council and the mayor, trying to figure out where our priorities are and what we think is best. So I think this is good. I think it helps us be able to understand kind of conceptually how it works in practice, and just appreciate you giving us this information and helping us have the information in front of us so we can make the best decision for the citizens. So.
Okay. Is there any other questions regarding the budget? You guys want to bring up anything else?
So I guess we had some ideas about that we wanted it to be a certain amount. Is that what you were saying, Clint, that, 2.3 is a fully vested merit, right? So do we have that $496,000 be what's in the budget, and we just go from there and we can make recommendations, or as we get more information and we can bring it down? Or do we start it somewhere in the middle and then we say, well, this data is showing that actually we could actually bring it up to the 2.3, or if it's going worse, we go down. I don't know the best route. I could see the benefit of both. I'm kind of leaning in some ways towards having the number be what was introduced, the 496, because if we're going to be amending it and using it as we go along, I don't see why we would just create some number out of nothing and start from there. I mean, we've had discussions about what that number might be, 1.5% or whatever, but I'm not sure in practice that actually makes a lot of sense.
I personally think we need to hold to that number. We need to give them the dollar amount, the 496, and let them work with that.
Yeah, and say that's
then just know that you can adjust it as you go.
That's an up to, right? So it's not anymore. And the whole purpose of withholding the funds back, at least in my mind, was if we fall off a cliff, right? So there's no really situation where we're ever going to go above the 496. So the only reason we're withholding it is if we're bringing it down. So if we're not making a policy suggestion that it should be lower than what the staff wants it to be in merit pay, then we need to make it the 496. That's how I see it.
But you're saying to hold it until whenever?
Yeah, and that's the question.
What's whenever?
When do we decide? I mean, they said monthly they'll have discussions.
I'm missing something maybe.
Well, it is. It's those monthly meetings that they'll hold with us. I personally don't see us doing much of anything definitive before September.
Dawn, I need you in the mic. It's not picking you up.
Sorry, thought I was. I think for me, the earliest would probably be September. That would give us June, July, possibly numbers. I think we'll have a pretty good feel by then.
And it's retroactive.
And it would be retroactive. So it's not like they would, if we end up giving it, they're not going to lose it. They're going to get it. But come September, if July and August or June and July look really bad, that's one of the areas we look at these other things we've got on hold, and they don't move forward either until we,
One more thing I was just going to say, Don, sorry to interrupt you, is that let's say we do fall off a cliff in the first 6 months, but we still have that 496 appropriated, and then we just really ramp up at the end of the year. The money's still there. So if we're doing really well, 8 months, 9 months from now, we can still pull the trigger and have it be retroactive because we've already appropriated it. Right?
Correct.
So I think it gets kind of a long-term approach that really only if we absolutely have the worst case scenario would we ever not appropriate the full 496. It's just making sure that we aren't falling off a cliff before we actually go ahead and feel comfortable enough doing it.
Yeah, because what I would really hate to do, Dave, is give it up front or by September give the full amount and still not have numbers. And like Zach's saying, come December, second wave hits, or we just don't know what's going to happen. We don't have that crystal ball, and things start turning bad again. And all of a sudden we don't have revenue, and we've cut as far as we can. Then we have to start cutting services. And that's the last thing I want to do is cut services. So if there's a way we can move forward cautiously with it and try to protect the money that's in there and review it as the summer goes on, I would feel much better about that. And I would hope that the staff would understand that we're trying to protect them as well as services.
I understand your caution, and I agree with caution. But I also believe we put 2.5 million on hold, right? And I'm not saying we take $500,000 and give it away, but you're talking about deficits in individuals' lives. Well, we're kind of creating one again here a little bit, and I could understand saying, let's give X amount percentage wise, however, knowing what they were going to get. So you give them half now, and then we decide. Now we're going to lose that half, and I understand that part, because they're going to, once you get it, you don't take it back. But I believe they're employees that have done a great job. I think we're cutting corners as it is with everything. And I'm all for, keeping an eye on everything, and especially, with those that work here. But I'm saying, I think to say, wait for the whole thing, I don't know. I can't come to grips with that.
So Dave, do you have an idea how much you would want to dish out now and how much you would like to hold on to later?
Is it again, here we go back to percentages. Is it 2.3? Is that the?
Well, we've cut $1.2 million out of the budget and put.
No. I'm talking specifically merit.
Merit. We've come down to 496,000.
Okay.
So you don't necessarily need to talk percentage. You
I
could
think he's
say-
thinking it was 3, now it's 2.3. So what does that?
Yeah,
I think that's where he's coming from.
496 is 2.3.
Yeah.
The 496 is 2.3.
Is
Yeah.
2.3.
Right.
So yeah, I say we give them, I don't know, half, whatever. You give them something and you hold whatever back to see what happens.
But you're
I don't
saying
think,
maybe give them 1% now and.
yeah, or
Evaluate it
1.5, I don't know, something but I don't think, I'm sorry. And maybe it's just my nature, but I don't see 200 grand or 220 grand being a huge anything. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, we probably have a few accounts with 200 grand in it that are not being touched. Okay. And so I don't think we're losing, and I don't know. I just can't
Okay.
see the world coming off a cliff that
Dave,
much.
that's a reasonable opinion.
it's-
You don't have to apologize for it.
I don't apologize.
I can understand it. I can understand it. I mean,
Yeah.
when you look at how much money the city revenues, city expenditures, that,
Right.
400, 500,000 is what, 1% or
I
something
mean,
like that?
I'm
So-
yeah, but I mean, to me, and I'll say this, truck doesn't have a feeling. So as far as I'm concerned, you can shoot a truck. I don't care, but people do, and if I felt real strong that there was that much money that would make a big difference, then to me, that's different. And I think in the long run, we can do some things up front that, somebody has to walk for a week, that's okay.
Well, that's the purpose of, I think, analyzing this monthly
Yeah.
as we go along,
Yeah,
so.
and I just want to see a couple of months worth of data. That's because the money's going to be appropriated, hopefully this evening for it, and it'll be there, but
Okay, council, this is a great discussion here, and I certainly want to give you ample time here on this budget because this is critical. We do have a couple other items, but what other topics do you have here? Because I'm just looking at the
You wanna go?
time here.
I've talked too much. You go ahead.
We got time.
no, there were two other areas that we had some discussion about. One being the potential water increase, the 10% that was voted on, part of the water master plan from a while ago, 2 years ago, and so there's a schedule of increases that were set. I think it was a 20% and a 30% this last year, and
And then
and now
10%
another
this year.
10% this year.
35, 20.
35, 20, 10.
Yep.
And we're now at the 10%, and we need to have a discussion of whether we keep that in based on our needs, based on the water system infrastructure and the presentation that was given by Mr. Jackson a while ago, or do we take that out? And we're going to have an analysis like we did last year, and Tracy's done at the end of summer to see where we are with conservation, see where we are with the water, what we've used, and analyze it and see if it's really needed. That was brought up again. And so do we take that rate out? And if it needs to be put back into whatever amount, it might not even be 10%. Do we take it out here and then after the analysis decide what to do if we need to or not? Versus leaving it
So-
in.
Maybe to clarify, so in the
Yeah.
consolidated fee schedule, the rate increase is not included to be effective July 1. In the budget, the effect of a rate increase in revenue and expense is there, but the majority of that would fall to net assets in the water fund anyway. And so, it's up to you. But the actual rate increase, we've already committed that we'd come back in November, so that it would be effective December 1st, one way or another, as far as actually increasing the rate. I just wanted to clarify.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're not
That's
taking
in the
any
budget
funding
as
out of
is.
the budget.
The dollars are in the budget, but the
Yeah.
actual
Okay.
on your bill, moving from a certain amount,
That's not done yet.
that doesn't happen July 1. That's,
So it's more just a kind of a memorialization of where we're going on this, if we take it out or if we leave it in. Presumptively.
I guess
Or
part of the
reduce it,
difference is
or-
too, is if you put the money in the budget now, assuming that you're going to do the rate increase because that's what the original analysis stated we need, then you don't have to do a budget amendment later. And that's a large enough budget amendment that we would do that up front. I bring these small ones at the end
Yeah.
because there's enough money in the overall budget to cover it, and we're not required to come for every $5.
Yeah.
Right? But, that would be large enough that we'd have a public hearing and open the budget
And I think that's
in order to bring the money back in.
right. And I think in my position is that
I was trying to say it.
we should have it should presumptively be out until we have the data that's a lot more new than the 3-year study that was the genesis of the idea, that it's out, and then we discuss with staff and we look at the data at the end of the summer, and then we decide if we think that we need that rate increase. And then if we do need that rate increase, we have the budget amendment, and we have to be the ones to come back to the public and say, we've looked this over and we agree with the last council with the 3-year cycle, and the data still shows that, and we're going to vote on it, and he's going to put it on our shoulders now. We're going to have some ownership of it. So my preference would be to have it out, and then once the data and we review it in November, we can put it back in if necessary, or we look at the data and we don't need it, or it goes lower, we can have those discussions then. That would be my position.
Well, on behalf of the last council, I will tell you that was the purpose of spreading it out over a 3-year period of time, is so that you could analyze it each year and see whether or not you needed it. But I do know that based upon a lot of the breaks that we've had lately, I mean, I can understand why it almost needs to be there. So I'll let you guys discuss this.
But last thing on that, Mayor, my discussion with Alex was that the first 2 years were the most important on the water increase for purposes of water capital expenditures and projects. And that the third increase wasn't necessarily as important as the first two for what we want to accomplish with water infrastructure in the city. Is that correct, Alex? And not to say that you're taking a position that you should be out or in, just that the first 2 years were the most important in terms of. Okay. And taking it out of this budget doesn't mean that we can't put it back in is the point. And I guess that's just my idea, is that if it should be presumptively out until we know we need it and the data shows it, the real-time data after 2 years, and we can put it back in. Well, that's my position.
It's really no different if you take
What's
it
the
out
difference?
or put it in.
That's what I'm saying. I'm
So-
saying if we're going to take ownership of it, I think we should take ownership of it. If it's going to just be in the budget, we're taking ownership of it right now without having seen the data. I'd want to see the data and then put it back in. Now, like I said, I in the end, there's probably not much difference. I'm just saying, if we aren't sure something is necessary, a rate increase on the citizens is not necessary. We don't know that yet. No one in this room can say it's necessary. So presumptively, it should be out until we can prove that it needs to be in. That's my position.
So my comment to that would be related to the street lighting fee. I mean, a street lighting fee we're proposing to double, 100% increase. A lot of people in the city, that's just a fee that they get to pay. At least on the water rate one, it's based on your usage. The other one is not. And having been one of the ones that voted for the water increases as outlined, I would say leave it in there. I mean, my neighborhood, as I mentioned, I think maybe in a past meeting, just went through a couple weekends ago of 7 or 8 breaks over the weekend. And I know the condition of a lot of the infrastructure, and I know the projects that need to be in the future, and I would hate to fall behind by not having that still in there. So I think it would be in there because if I don't want to pay it, I use less water. So it's more of a usage thing. But that's my opinion.
And taking it out is not me taking a position about whether I'm going to put it in or not. It's just saying, just like the merit pay, I don't have all the data in front of me to be able to make the determination about whether it's required. So I want to go to my neighbor and say, yeah, we took it out because we aren't sure of it. And guess what? We're going to review it. And if the data shows that it needs to be in there, then it's going to come back in there. And you can come to the meeting and you can yell at me when the weighting gets increased. Now, it's already in there. They're going to yell at me either way. So I'm not even taking a position about whether it should be, or because I don't have the information for that.
And what you're talking about, these breaks and things, the analysis might come back and it might be even more than 10%.
Yeah.
I mean, that could be possible.
I'm not arguing percentages. I'm not arguing anything that way. Everything you said, I believe is right. The only thing I'm trying to weigh, we take it out or we put it in. What's the difference if we're going to come back in November and make decisions? You talk about we're making a decision come hell or high water. We're going to do it, whether it's out or in. And is it hard to put it back? I mean, I don't know. What's easiest?
No, it'd be easy. Like I said, it's just,
Okay.
They both
it's just a
require a
philosophy.
motion.
It's just a
However
philosophy.
it's a moot point. Let's move on to ducks. I
Okay.
mean, it don't bother me.
Okay, council, we have 10 minutes left, and if any of you want a quick 2-minute break, then I would say if you have any more items on the budget,
Want to hit the street lighting?
you want to hit it quickly so that I know we can't do anything quickly here, but I mean, we also have 2 more items. So I'm concerned about making sure that we get to these other 2 items and because I do know the consolidated fee is another topic. And of course, on behalf of the residents, we definitely need to speak about the fire restrictions. So those are critical items to me that we need to discuss here in this meeting. So
I would think let's do the fire restrictions since that's not on our regular meeting. We can discuss about the consolidated fee in the other meeting.
I would say we do have Mr. Price here from Parks and Rec, and if he could take just a second to explain the changes in fees for Parks and Rec, that would be good. Then he wouldn't have to stay the whole meeting.
okay. I will make the decision right now that we will, any more additional items regarding the budget, we'll hold off until our next meeting. We will move on to the consolidated fee and allow Mr. Price to explain the Parks and Rec portion of it. And also allow enough time for the chief to go over the fire restriction. So, Mr. Price?
Thank you. The consolidated fee schedule changes that we're looking at have to do with the plaza that is just outside the building here. And the old plaza was $75 for a rental for 4 hours. The new fee that we're looking at is $150. The reason we looked at that is because the new plaza, the new pavilion has additional features that can be included with the rental. And it also ties the use of the plaza to the pavilion. And so instead of just being able to use the pavilion, they can spread out throughout that plaza and have a party or an event that needs that additional space.
And does this give them access also to the kitchen area that has a lot of amenities to it or not?
That would be through a special event application. And if they wanted to use either the ticketing area or the concession area, we would handle that on a case-by-case basis through the special event application.
Does that fee increase from the 150? Should they want maybe just one of the item, perhaps just the kitchen? They don't need the ticketing area?
It would increase, but we didn't feel that we could set a single fee for that because there are so many different applications of that.
Right. Okay, I think that's fair.
Does the plaza include the amphitheater?
It does not.
So you could have two things going on?
We do. And that's why in the consolidated fee schedule and in practice, we will not allow this to be rented online. They will have to come into the office, and we only open this pavilion after we have set the Davis Arts Council schedule for the season
Right.
and our city events. And so
But what about rentals? Like if they rent, Susie's dance thing, and then you've got a thing, and they start, what about music both ways?
Yeah, we would ask them to come in and review the conditions of use for the plaza. And at that time, we could let them know what is calendared in the amphitheater and let them know that if there is a conflict, the amphitheater will take precedence and they will not be allowed to use.
And that's why you
music.
have them come in so you can, it's not an online, I got it. And
Right.
that's good because I think there's certain questions you need to ask so you don't have a battle, but between the two.
And quite often, both of these facilities are rented in conjunction, the amphitheater and the
Yeah.
plaza area. And you'll notice down in the bottom, that's one of the other changes is we moved our rental time from 3 hours to 4 hours to match there.
Well, it's a very nice brand new facility, so I think that,
Gorgeous.
It's gorgeous, it's warranted, and a great place to hold any events, so we appreciate you looking at that.
Thank you.
Okay, as far as the rest of the consolidated fees, we'll just cover it in the next meeting. So with that, let's move on to Chief Kevin Ward to give us the fire restriction update.
And Council, I'll be very brief with this. We are just expecting a very active time with fireworks as they're coming upon us with all the cancellation of all the shows. We know that sales are going to be pretty high this year. So the discharge dates I'll actually put together afterward. I'll have packets that I'll give you that's got everything that I'm going over right now that has the discharge dates, and all that's on the State Fire Marshal's website. But basically, fireworks sales start on June 24th and go until July 25th. A lot of them close down for a little bit of time. They don't stay open the whole time. The discharge times, again, are July 2nd through the 5th and July 22nd through the 25th, and that's from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. at night, except on the actual holidays, and it goes till midnight. The restrictions that we look at putting in place, the municipal code 9.64.150 allows the fire chief to make some restrictions based on adverse environmental conditions and significant fire danger and fuel moistures. And so the decision I've made this year is to continue with the aerial restrictions that we've had in place for several years now. That is also on our city website and also has to be on the state fire marshal's website as well. So that will be on there. All fireworks continue to be banned east of Highway 89. That's also in our municipal code. So that just any firework is banned east of 89. It's been like that since 2004.
Including sparklers, simple little
Well,
sparklers.
unless you're a novelty sparkler, and that has to do with a certain size. I think it's 6 inches. A 6-inch or less sparkler is allowed. That's considered to be a novelty and actually not a firework. But any and all fireworks, so east of 89 are banned. The other thing that I would tell you that we are planning on doing, as we've done in the past, is added enforcement. All of our staff, our community risk reduction staff, the fire marshal and inspectors, myself, and we go out on these discharge times at night, and mostly in the restricted areas for aerials and east of 89, and work with the police department on enforcement. The one thing we're going to do this year is added enforcement in terms of citation process. So that means we just may have to bring in law enforcement for the citations. We just feel that it's a little more prudent. We need to take a little bit stronger action than in the past. We typically confiscate illegal fireworks. Those that have aerial fireworks in the restricted area, we just advise them to go to the 2 city parks that we've authorized and let them discharge there. But any illegal fireworks, we do confiscate those, and then we end up disposing those and have a burn barrel that we put them in.
Okay.
I just have one question, Chief. So the aerial restrictions, these decisions are made by individual municipal fire chiefs?
Yes, depending on the city, you cannot, by state law, you can't just say no fireworks
Right.
allowed in my city at all. It actually takes quite a bit of analysis, and that's what I was going to give you folks. And this
Okay.
is actually on our city website and the state fire marshal's website, and all the cities have gone through, and we actually gone through an analysis and looked at where our hazards are in terms of the wildland urban interface. And so that's why it's not straight lines.
Yeah.
we've tried to be smart and try to do really what we feel is fair in terms of the restrictions.
My question was, can someone purchase an aerial firework in Layton at one of the fireworks shops?
Yes, there are aerials
They can
are allowed.
purchase it, so they can
Aerials are allowed,
okay.
and we actually thank you, Councilmember. That's a good point. At the tents, we require the sellers to post a large map, and we usually have a lot of these smaller maps for them to take, and we tell them basically to just make sure that if you're buying aerial fireworks, you understand that you cannot discharge them in the restricted areas. But they do sell all the aerials at all the tents, whether they're wherever they're buying them. They just can't discharge them in the restricted areas.
Okay, I just didn't want to have someone buy fireworks for his kids and then have a police officer show up. That's not a good 4th of July.
Right. So that's why we've worked with parks. We are actually the only city that I'm aware of that actually offers that alternative to our residents to be able to take fireworks to the park and discharge them. So we work with the parks to have places for them to dispose of them, barrels full of water, and we're going to have multiple barrels in there, more than we've had in the past, just because we anticipate a lot of people going there. So that's actually a really nice benefit for our residents to be able to do that. Like I said, we're the only one that I know of that opens up a city park, because basically they would be banned by code.
All right.
Chief, really quick, campfires up the trails along the Bonneville Shoreline Trail, the canyons that go up. Who has jurisdiction for enforcement there? And is there no campfires or no fires right now?
No fires are allowed. We actually had a meeting today on fire restrictions with the U.S. Forest Service Ranger District this morning. No campfires above the Bonneville Shoreline Trail area, at about 5,200 foot elevation is about where it's at. We allow recreational fires in a backyard anywhere in the city if they're in 3 feet in diameter and 2 feet high and clean dry wood. They and 25 feet from the structure and have a water source nearby. Any part of the city, they can have a recreational fire like that. But as far as an open campfire, Up on the Bonneville Shoreline Trail, any of the unincorporated county areas, that's not allowed. The Forest Service prohibits all fires there. And we've actually gone through with our fire marshal and deputy fire marshal, have canvassed that shoreline trail to go dismantle any fire rings or anything that's out. So, and that's another part of our enforcement action, is making sure there's no fires up in any of those areas east of 89.
Do people call you and say, I'm going to start a fire? I mean, I know that's part of our ordinance, right?
For recreational fires,
Right.
We usually do. We usually get notified if somebody has a recreational fire. They'll call down to the station, and then we'll note that fire's there. Occasionally, we do get complaints. Sometimes it's related to the smoke or they're concerned. But if they're following the directions of a 3-foot diameter, 2 feet high, clean, dry wood, that's usually not a problem. Especially if they use some of the smaller fire pits, that pre-manufactured ones that you can buy at the home improvement centers. Those work really well because those have a lid and a spark arrestor. So those actually are allowed closer to the structures, and that's actually what we really recommend people use. That's a much better option.
Okay, very good.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council.
Thank you. Okay, council, there's a couple items left, but we can discuss those in the next meeting. This brings our work meeting to a close. I know it is 7:02, and typically we would start our regular council meeting at 7 p.m. We're already late. But given that, I'm also going to exercise my right to take a 2-minute break. We've been sitting here, so I think we need to get up, stretch our legs, take a 2-minute break, and we'll reconvene at 7:04 so that we can start by 7:05. Thank you.